This episode of The Watch is brought to you by Coffee Mate. Coffee Mate has been searching the globe for flavors that pair perfectly with coffee. So when they heard the new season of HBO's original series, The White Lotus, was set in Thailand, they were inspired to brew up 2 new flavored creamers, Thai iced coffee and pina colada flavored creamers. They're available for a short time only, so for the love of coffee, go try them now.
I need support staff to clear the room.
Stand up and walk now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me in the studio with his dog-eared copy of All Quiet on the Western Blunt, it's Andy Greenwald! Yeah!
Good to be back. Look at
Let's
this energy
go!
level.
Hollywood's biggest night is, in fact, whatever day you come through LAX, man. You know what I'm saying?
Should we, first of all, thank you.
Yeah.
Nice to see you. Should I talk about the funniest thing that I should have done? Which is I did return
Yes.
this weekend
Yes.
from a fortnight abroad. And as I was exiting, I did notice one of the not Uber drivers, like the limo drivers with the names, was the person there to pick up the esteemed French director Jacques Audiard for his time at the Oscars.
But you guys could have rapped about the last episode of The Bureau if you jumped in the car with him.
Or what if they cut, like if I had just gone up to him and said, bonjour, I could have been at the Oscars.
Yeah, I think they would have. You have the exact same hairstyle as Audiard.
I would have worn a hat like he did. I think the level of interest Hollywood showed in Amelia Perez would have meant that I could have just sailed through.
Greenwald, before we get started, we're going to talk about the Oscars. We're going to talk about Severance. We're going to talk about White Lotus. We might do a little 1,000 Blows.
You're cagey
chatted
about it.
a little bit about it with Mantzoukas. I mean, I'm not cagey about anything.
That's non-canon.
I know.
If we talk about things,
if you're not there, it didn't happen. I understand.
But similarly, when I talk about things when you're not on the show,
I don't care.
I know.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Housekeeping. You're watching us. If you're watching us, you may be doing it on YouTube at Ringer-TV. You can also do it on Spotify now, where you listen to our show, and you can also just watch it right there on the player on Spotify. Please follow us on Instagram at @thewatchpod_ and email us at thewatch@spotify.com.
Do you watch yourself on Spotify?
Yeah, I mean, just to do a tech check, keep everybody here in line, make sure performance is at the levels that I'm accustomed to.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
Octane, baby. Yeah.
Cool.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
From one NATO country to another.
For now.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Oscars, unless you want to do some opening kind of like just, you want to get loose? You want to talk to me about England?
No, I mean, I just want to say I am a little loose because I was just saying to Kaya that like flying there, I'm great.
I don't understand this.
I'm a pro
dude.
on going there.
I cannot go east.
Coming
west, I'm like, who wants to, let's play 2.
God, that's funny. That's the same advice that the Third Reich got. You know?
That is funny.
It's true.
Yeah.
They didn't listen, thankfully. Yeah, I can go east, no problem. I get there, hang out, have dinner, wake up, I'm fine.
I don't understand
I come back here, I am destroyed.
You don't wake up at 1 a.m. and just start like, and you're not like shocked awake.
There?
Yeah.
No.
Wow.
Here, yes. Yeah. So you're seeing me. I think that if we had done this pod, I think my sweet spot probably would have been around 4:45 this morning. I think I was pretty locked in.
That's where all the severance takes are coming from.
I was up. Here's the way the brain works at that hour. Because the thing is, you're just like, your body does become accustomed to taking coffee at a certain point.
Uh-huh.
And so for me, that point is midnight LA time when I'm like, boy, I really need that first coffee. So when I did wake up at 4, I was having really, really strong thoughts about television. I really thought I could have podcasted.
Yeah.
But I was also like, I'm a bit peckish. And then I was like, you know what would be a good idea right now? Crack that bag of tortilla chips.
You had tortilla chips at 4 in the morning?
I didn't. I'm just trying to explain to you what's going on in here.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to take care of you. We're going to treat you gently. We're going to teach you with kid gloves.
Sure. No, I could bare knuckle, like 1,000 blows.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the Oscars. Obviously, Sean and Amanda have done the Lord's work.
Sean was dressed like he was doing the Lord's work. That was amazing.
They had a truly the
costumes were
greatest
out.
day in the Andor verse. Sean and Amanda did a pre-show. They did a post-show. You should definitely be listening to them when it comes to actually analyzing what this all means, what it means for the Oscars, like how we got here in terms of this awards race, and just their wonderful thoughts on the films themselves. I wanted to hear from you as someone who I think, sadly, to be honest, is probably more representative of the larger audience than we'd like to admit.
This is the first time I've ever been the layperson.
Which is that you have not either had a chance or the opportunity or the desire to see a lot of the films that have been nominated, right?
That's correct.
So you probably can't weigh in too strongly outside of like personal preference, right? Well, I mean, nobody's going to stop you. You know, it's a free country.
Yeah, but you are right. I think that I have seen 3 of the 10 nominated
Conclave,
films.
Brutalist, and Dune 2.
Yeah, that's right.
And Wicked?
No. Kids saw it without me. Then they keep watching it without me. Which is fine, by the way. Okay. I'm cool with it. My kids were so mad that Ariana got robbed, in their opinion. Like, really upset about that.
If they were listening to the big picture, they would have known what was happening, what was coming.
I was like, guys, Gamora won. They were like, no, Honora won. I'm like, no.
Guys, Lioness Joe won.
Wait, by the way, that's right there. The Gamora move, like we could, but it's Honora. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh,
I'm pitching like that. That's good.
Yeah, she's just a girl,
But she's green,
right?
But it's not Wicked. See, everything's working for me. I agree with you.
I want to ask you though what you thought of it as a piece of television.
As a piece of television, it was a little perplexing. There were very entertaining moments. I thought Conan was good. I'm happy to see him having a good time and laughing. And I thought his jokes mostly landed, and he had a good winning spirit. And I loved the blue tuxedo.
Yes,
I have to say that was really sharp. I also really liked the cinema streams bit.
Yeah,
I thought that was very good.
We bring you this salty snack. Yeah, that was good.
What did they say the screen was? 1,000 smartphones stitched together. Thought that was good. I thought what was particularly, there are a couple of very strange things like there are every Oscars. One was that the set and kind of vibe was very, very, very Third Reichy, to make the second reference.
Really?
Like, I just thought it was very, very intense and serious looking, and similarly like the In Memoriam segment with those
The music was weird for that, yeah.
Choral numbers, and the whole thing felt very... I'm not saying that the Oscars should ever be business casual, despite what Adam Sandler was wearing. It's just that everything felt so overly overwrought and formal that didn't match with the sort of scrappy, I guess we're kind of the independent spirit now, and that we kind of want people to just please come watch movies in the same way that TV, the Emmys used to be like, well, we're not movies, but we're trying here. Like that used to be the vibe of a lot of Emmy shows. So I thought that that overall sense of like portentousness felt a little at odds with what could have been a little bit
the physical set
and the staging of a lot of it. But then again, like, considering how these things can often go, I thought there were a lot of good speeches, mainly powered by the fact that Sean Baker is an unnaturally charismatic and talented and funny guy to be, especially for someone who won 4. Like, personally, did he win 4 Oscars last night?
He won editing, directing, writing.
And he's a producer, so he won picture too.
And picture, yeah. So, and then he would have, I guess he was the casting director of the movie. So next year, as Sean was talking about, they have casting as next year, and he probably would have won that as well. But it is crazy. I think he has more Oscars now than Steven Spielberg.
I'm just sort of sitting with that for a second.
Yeah.
But speeches were good at that, and generally I thought, I don't know.
How was it watching it not having seen the movies, though? I mean, typically you probably get closer about 5, 6, 7. You've been in and out of the country. Like,
I've sometimes gotten closer to 9 or 10.
Yeah, and so what was it like watching and just having seen just a couple of things? Like, did you find yourself cheering for Honora, or not? Like, did you care?
Worst, so just full disclosure, I've been desperate to see Honora for months and have not made it happen for various circumstantial reasons. I did finally, on the flight back, decide, I'm like, okay, enough is enough. Because I thought I would be able to watch it while abroad, but I forgot to download it in any capacity in American airspace. So it is not streamable in the UK. It is in theaters still. Okay. So I had no choices. And so then I was on the 11-hour flight, and I was like, I gotta rip the Band-Aid. I know this is not how Sean Baker intended for me to see this film, as he said last night, but he also made an entire movie on an iPhone once. So really, come on. So I did fire it up, and pretty clearly realized that it would just be naked ladies.
It's about the first hour, yeah.
For a long time. And I did do like a politeness check to see if there were any babies around me. And there weren't, but I still was like, this doesn't feel awesome. This just doesn't feel. And again, in the scheme of things, like, why should I be prudish about a film about sex workers when the man across from me was just absolutely, unabashedly watching Kraven the Hunter? Like, I feel like he had more to be embarrassed about, but I stopped it. So all of that is to say, I still haven't seen Andor, even though I feel pretty strongly that I will be retroactively pro Andor.
I can't tell with you anymore. You know, the ones that you have seen, your takes have been spicy. I thought that, to your point about the Indie Spirit Awards, you know, I think these things go in cycles. I think that there's probably still some residual COVID and strikes.
That's true.
Sort of entropy happening within the industry where even last night, as Sean and Amanda pointed out, I thought wisely, there was just not even a lot of trailers for movies. You know, like I thought the most gasp, this is great to see trailer was Andor, which we haven't really talked about on this pod.
No, we haven't, because it dropped as we were recording last Monday.
That's right. Which, aside from whether or not, I think it's pretty divisive, the Steve Earle pick, because it's just like a little bit more like, the fucking real ones know.
Yeah.
But it's not
Let's go.
Thunderstruck by AC/DC, which is what I think it starts out as, you know, as a riff. It looks better than anything Star Wars has done since the J.J. Abrams, like since Force Awakens and the Rian Johnson film. Honestly, it looks like some of the visuals in that show look astonishing this year. And I wonder if it's going to be much more action-packed.
I mean, should we just talk about that instead of the Oscars?
I was just going to say that there was...
Chris, Andorra. These ideas are free. They're just coming off the dome. I'm going to go to bed in 90 minutes. So take what you can. This is good.
Usually, I think you have made fun of the Oscars for being like movies, like the movie exceptionalism and Hollywood and stuff.
Yeah, not feeling so smug
now. I thought
that
it was a show with a lot of humility. I think acknowledging both the tough time LA has been through, the tough time the industry has been through. I thought there were pleas from the artists to go see these films in the way that they have intended for them to be seen, to keep the theatrical experience alive, to keep the communal aspect of movie going alive. The shots at Jeff Bezos, the shots at Amazon, like the weird juxtaposition of celebrating James Bond that had just been basically like taken over by Amazon while also making Amazon jokes. Like, it definitely seemed to be a show with a little bit more of a raised middle finger this year, which I kind of thought suited it for the time, but it was not an overtly, at least from the Conan perspective and for a majority of the speeches, not in an overtly political or grandstandy night, which may have worked for some people and may have disappointed others.
So when you say political in that sense, do you mean in terms of the politics of the business or just
I mean,
politics
Daryl
in
Hannah,
general?
and Robert De Niro obviously spoke about Ukraine. The No Other Land victory was momentous and obviously was incredibly touching moment of people pleading for recognition, not only of this conflict, but also of their film.
I also thought, just as a note about that it actually, I know we love spontaneity at award shows and on the stage. I thought that was a really lovely example of some forethought in the sense of who spoke first, who spoke second, what they spoke about, and how they spoke together was really beautifully choreographed and very effective in the moment that they had on stage.
So I just thought this Oscar show just to me felt, even though Andor had this historic night, Andor sized in a weird way. It was kind of yes.
Well, I think that's...
there are these big movies that had no shot, right? Like Wicked and Dune had no shot.
Well,
then there are movies that feel very Hollywood, like Conclave or Complete Unknown, that were outsiders. And I thought it was interesting that this was a celebration of this came down essentially. I know Conclave was a late breaker with BAFTAs and that in the betting markets it was getting closer. Before that, Conclave had kind of replaced The Brutalist, which had been the kind of, the other competitor for Andor for Best Picture and Best Director and stuff like that. And those two films are two of my favorite movies of the year. They're both in my top 5.
Yeah.
They are not Barbie and Oppenheimer, ultimately.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. You asked how it felt watching the show, having only seen a certain number of the nominees. The truth is, only a certain number of the nominees were relevant on the awards campaign. As you said, most of these movies were not going to win anything, and that was very clear from the beginning. What's odd is, as you just said as well, when it came to the major awards, not the technical awards, Dune Part 2 had as much of a chance as Nickel Boys. Now, again, that's not a quality comment. I look forward to seeing Nickel Boys, and I really like Dune Part 2. But it is a very strange moment, although one that kind of mirrors the American economy, that the entire middle of an industry has been hollowed out.
Yeah.
So the big studios, I mean, Warner Brothers spent a ton of money doing FYC stuff for Dune Part 2. Like, it was everywhere, posters, and obviously there's going to be a Dune Part 3, so it's not like a... there's still something to glean from that investment.
I continue to say this, which is that the third Dune story, I would not describe as the Return of the King.
No, I've heard this as well.
Yeah.
Is it the fifth one where there's the descendant who's part worm? I feel like that's the one I'm ready for.
I feel like he gets pretty wormy himself in 3, but we'll see what Denis cooks up.
But it is odd that nobody, like, what is the target? Are people trying to hit the target? Because the studios, in the case of Warner Brothers and Universal, are doing their best. They're like, look what we did with Dune, and they're proud of it, and rightfully so. And Universal's like, look what we did with Wicked, where we developed this over a long time, this beloved musical, and we nailed it in the sense of, like, the fans love it, Broadway people love it. It made a ton of money. There's a sequel. It's launching, Cynthia Erivo into a different level of stardom. And then they go to these awards and they win the technical awards, and they sit there being like, what do we have to do? It's a little bit strange, and it feels odd. I know nothing, and I am not really qualified to be commenting on this, having not seen most of the movies. But I was texting with Sean and Amanda because I saw that they both had picked Andor to win Big Picture, to win the best picture.
With Sean and Amanda, huh?
I was waiting for that. Well, first I texted them the Jacques Audiard sign at LAX, like I texted you. I'm gonna be honest with you.
So you do a lot of copy paste, send out a.
Well, no, I sent it to
you.
Yeah, I've been on the plane for 12 hours, and I got a laugh from you, but I wasn't fed enough. Like, I wanted more laughs, and I realized I should have sent it to all of you. And I did think about adding you to that thread too, and asked you to just sort of play along.
Because, like, I know exactly what you mean. We're just like, that didn't get the response that I needed.
Yeah,
yeah.
So I tweaked the language a little bit, and I got nice reactions from them, which I appreciate.
Good. I'm glad they were there for you.
But my secondary reason for texting them was that I saw that they had picked Andor, and I was surprised by that because I just thought, again, based on nothing, just a lifetime of watching this stuff, that Conclave was likely to be the winner because it was the most okay of it all, in the sense that it's, like, relatively crowd pleasing. It looks beautiful. I think it's an incredible looking film. And coming off of BAFTAs, I was like, this just seems like a more genial consensus Oscar movie. Again, I'm not saying that pejoratively. It just felt like, given the competition, that seemed the likely winner. Then Nora was a little too indie, a little too spiky to be the runaway favorite. I was completely wrong about that.
Sex workery, is what you're saying.
Well, I stand with sex workers and always have on this podcast. I'm not sure. You're very silent on this subject.
I stand with them.
Okay, great.
I do.
But I thought that was interesting that it went that way, and I guess it's nice when they. I mean, Sean Baker's a great filmmaker. I like his movies always, so I think that's pretty exciting that he has such a big night. I was going to talk about The Brutalist, but that's fine.
You see Real Pain?
Yeah, I saw that one. That's another one I saw. Is that 4?
That did not get nominated for Best Picture. It was up for Best Supporting. I just wanted to talk about Kieran Culkin for a second.
Yeah, great speech.
As a father, how did you feel about him being like about
let's go
throw another baby in there? Yeah.
I mean, I was interested. I feel like, I'm sure that the Culkin family is very close, but, like, traditionally, the story of their childhood is not one of, like, it's not really.
I think he's
trying to.
I'm not trying to psychoanalyze Kieran Culkin on the watch. Yeah.
No, I really enjoy him on the award circuit, and I thought he gave a great performance in a movie that I thought was pretty good.
Yeah.
I didn't feel much more about that movie. Did you have strong feeling about the movie?
I loved that movie.
Did you?
I did not. I no longer understand, like, if it's the best script of the year. Like, if it's one of the best scripts, it feels like it should be one of the best pictures. Like, sometimes I understand that Oscars kind of anoints things and says it's at this level, but we want to give you recognition. And I thought he was very good. You know,
in the movie or on the circuit?
I guess the question I ask myself is, when I really want to see Kieran Culkin and Glenn Ross, because I want to see him in an environment where the rhythms and the language of Mamet is very precise.
Did you ever see him in Lonergan? Have you seen him on stage before?
I didn't. I've never seen him on stage, but I feel like every time I've seen Kieran Culkin, he is a character actor. He's doing Kieran Culkin.
He's doing a particular character.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Ricky Roma, who he is playing in Glengarry Glen Ross, which has been played by Al Pacino. And
he's playing Ricky Roma?
Yes.
This is the production with him, Bill Burr, Bob Odenkirk.
Yes.
It is coming to Broadway soon, imminently.
In like a week.
Yeah.
So I really want to see him in that because I want to see him play between the hash marks.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I think my feeling about that movie was a little bit schizoid because I thought the script was great and I liked Jesse Eisenberg's approach to the subject matter and the tone of the movie. And I thought that in a vacuum, I think Kieran Culkin was very moving and very invested in the character and very alive. I didn't always feel like he and the movie were in tune with each other, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I think that Kieran Culkin performs a very specific kind of Kieran Culkin neuroses that, in my experience, in a lifetime in an Ashkenazi neurotic body, doesn't really match. But it was good. Yeah, I think that's sort of a very like tightrope walking way of saying I agree with you. I'd like to see what else he can do.
I'm a huge fan of Mikey Madison's performance in Anora and her in general. Loved her in Scream, the reboot.
Oh, she's in that as well.
Yeah, she was part of the. I believe she's in the one that's the in between the like new trilogy. There was one that came out with like Emma Roberts. And I think another Culkin. And,
Rory.
Yeah. And so I think Mikey Madison is in that one, if I remember correctly, and she's quite good.
She was very good in a show we never really
or
talked
maybe
about.
She is in the first.
She was in Better Things.
But she is in
very
Better Things,
good in Better Things.
But I'm a huge fan of hers. Sorry to Demi Moore. She's had a great awards season.
Listen, she's going to be running an oil company soon on Paramount.
I mean, dude, S2, I expect big things from Cammy.
I'm sure.
Let's get off the Oscars. I thought I had a nice time watching it.
Last thing. What did you feel about the best actor? I know you had some Timmy stock.
I thought Chalamet should have won. I think Brody is very good in it, in The Brutalist.
Does he get points for being on this podcast? I think so.
Yeah, I think that, but I don't want to overweight appearances on the watch, you know?
Really?
Yeah.
That's all I want to do.
I thought Chalamet I would have loved to have seen Chalamet win. I guess that's what I mean.
That's where I wanted Rafe. For whatever misgivings I had about Conclave, I just think he's incredible and he deserves an Oscar.
I would love to hear your thoughts on A Complete Unknown, honestly.
I still haven't seen it.
You'll either have the best time or you will walk out 20 minutes in.
Walk out of my own home.
That's right.
Walk off of an airplane. Goodbye, sir. You, sir, with the Craven the Hunter on. I really like Adrian Brody as an actor, and I think that I thought The Brutalist showcased the things that he is just unmatched at in terms of intensity and emotion, like performing with his whole body and self. Yep. But I didn't think the movie set him up to success and kind of left him. I think it left him a little exposed sometimes. I don't think that I had some issues with that movie, but one of the things that I didn't love about it is that other than Guy Pearce, I did not think it had a lot of good performances, and I think it came from the direction, which I did not think was necessarily flattering to actors because Brody was giving everything of himself and everything that he gave made it onto the screen. And I feel like it seemed like too much.
I'm fascinated. I want to talk to you about this.
I felt that way about Felicity Jones' performance too. But go on.
Okay. I think I was way more into Felicity Jones generally than it seems it was generally received. Although she did get an Oscar nomination, I think a lot of people were like, that did not work.
That was me. I was that person.
As far as Brady Corbet setting them up for success, I think maybe that is a little bit of how much you liked the movie or not, because I think he actually exposed them in an intentional way. I don't think that they're supposed to be necessarily like heroic or villainous people. I think they're,
but my comment has nothing to do with like the characters. It's just I think that actors will often tell you that like they don't. The director and the editor are in charge of their performance. They will give they'll give takes, they'll give options, they'll give...
It's funny, they don't really say that when they win awards, do they?
It's a great call. But they will generally give you like...
Nobody's like, oh man, I didn't do shit. This was all the director and the editor.
Thank you for finding me in this.
Right.
But it's true. Like, you could craft very different performances out of the raw footage that usually is collected on a film set.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that the Brutalists showcased the Spinal Tap, this performance goes to 11 takes of these actors.
Gotcha.
When I think there were probably more subtle variations on some of the scenes. Basically, I feel like it should have been longer and shown more variations. I didn't like the movie.
One day we'll discuss it.
One day we'll talk about it.
I just noticed that I did something with my shoulders where I was like changing my posture. And that to me means it's time to talk about White Lotus.
Do you notice that about yourself?
Well, I have been thinking about my posture generally because I can't tell whether it's age or like phone, but I do feel like a little bit more hunchbacky or slumped or kind of like...
Oh, so you're thinking about Lachlan.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that kid and the homie who was like, you got to do this, you got to do that, and don't cross your legs and everything. And I was wondering whether or not I would enjoy that kind of session. I have to say that the season of White Lotus, we're talking about episode 3 now, unless you wanted to do any more Oscar stuff.
No, I feel good.
I would generally say has gotten off to a slow but incredibly pleasant start.
Yeah.
I do feel like now that we are at the end of episode 3, a couple of balls are rolling downhill now, narrative-wise. I'm here for the hang. It's okay. I'm not making a big complaint, but I am saying that I do think that this information that we got out of the first 3 episodes and the overall feel that we got out of the first 3 episodes probably could have been an episode and a half. Maybe that's being cruel or not fair, but I do think for me, I was just like a lot of shots of water, a lot of shots of like...
Couple monkeys.
Yeah, a lot. Like, I just feel like there's a lot of interstitial kind of like vibe setting, which I get, and I'm still very into this show. I was just saying, I was happy to get to the end of the 3rd episode and be like, I get where Rick's going next. These gals got some conflict. Like, let's go.
Yes, I think I completely agree with you. This is how I feel about the show. I have not been bored once, but I did note that 3 hours have elapsed, and there are no... Are they
still the same people that they were when they checked in? Is the question you're asking yourself basically when you're watching the show?
No, it's that there's no variation in any of the conflicts that were laid out in the opening moments of the pilot thus far.
Right.
That when the Ratliff family arrived and Jason Isaacs is, clinging to his phone, and then there's something that's worrying him, that has continued to worry him. And now the FBI is in his office. Yep. His sons are on the same journeys they were on at the beginning. His daughter has gone to the monastery twice.
Yep.
And not...
Parker Posey keeps taking lorazepam.
Keeps taking them pills. And...
Is that what she's taking?
They don't really say. I think it's possible.
I thought there was like a...
She seems to have a couple options.
Oh, well.
Do you think she just... Wait, you think that would help with your posture?
I think it would send it the opposite direction.
Slump it out. But like I do think that we generally, especially because of the tenor and vibe and pace of a lot of television these days, we probably overrate strong zags as opposed to the unsexy work of, it's like offensive line play. You know what I mean? Like that's really where the game is won.
Television is won in the trenches.
Yeah. So now, next week, if we're talking about episode 4 and we haven't really moved anything in any direction, we might revisit that. We might want to dial up some explosives.
Yes. I wonder whether or not also just personally healing, if that's what there's ideas of like that you can pay to heal, which I think is sort of an underlying idea and theme of this season. And that you can try all this different stuff. You can do the stones and you can do the classes and you can do digital detoxes and all these things, but you're still you.
Yeah.
Is interesting, but maybe not as interesting as some of the clashes of characters. I also feel like in the first 2 seasons, like there was already more overlap between the disparate groups of people.
The groups, yeah.
Which I think is sort of the spice of life when it comes to White Lotus is Daddario being confronted by Sweeney, like
vacation friends,
yeah,
not friends,
or just like
enemies.
The beef around the pool and stuff like that. So I was happy to hear that Patrick Schwarzenegger had gotten himself a yacht invite
Yeah, that's good for him.
Just like let's get some folks talking to other folks.
Things go really well historically on the show when characters go on boats. I do want to just respond to your comment about paying for healing. I don't really know how our Walmart branded holiday segment was put out into the world, if people listening saw it, where we got gifts for each other. But whatever you paid in real CR or Walmart bucks for that portable Theragun that you got me.
Are you implying that there is a CR Bitcoin now? CR bucks.
I would invest, and I'm glad the government is finally strengthening that marketplace. You got me a little portable Theragun, which, by the way, that healed me on this trip. That was really a kind gift. That really helped. I think overlap would be good, but I also don't want to look past the things that we are getting, and the through 3 episodes, and I think really,
I'm just making content. No, I love the way.
No, I know.
I'm just talking. You know.
Well, let me throw this on the fire.
Allow me to retort.
The 3rd episode really underlined that Walton Goggins is doing God tier work, as he always does, and I think that there may have been a little. So, what the show is saying this season particularly, or might be starting to say, about a certain kind of capitalist malaise masculinity is kind of interesting. Like Rick and Greg, Gary, we talked about this last week, just sort of staring into space as
they lose their hair and pay for younger women to date them.
Yeah. And just take no pleasure in anything because their entire existence is just maintaining whatever it is they've been able to accrue. So they're basically just playing a life of defense, against everything, including the ravages of time.
Yeah.
Or potentially,
their past, like in terms
Interpol.
of Belinda coming up to him and being like, I know you. Yeah.
Yeah. And then particularly this episode where we see different sides of Rick, because we see him go up to Sitala and, and be charming, or at least change, put on a performance for that. And then we also see him get super hot. That was those were some aggressive pulls on the joint that he took.
Yeah.
That was pro level stuff. And then seeking freedom for snakes.
You go into a tree. Yeah.
I mean, that was really good. And I'm just, what I'm watching, and this speaks to your point too about potential overlap between the various groups. The way that the 3 friends, the women, are behaving, it's season. That's in some ways that's the most White Lotus storyline so far, where everything seems perfect when they get there, and then immediately the fault lines are exposed, and then now they're noticing them, and it's starting to get a little toxic. I was thinking about those relationships. They are best friends, but they kind of loathe each other.
Don't seem to know a whole lot about each other, yeah.
And they don't want to know, or they don't like what they discover. And then I was thinking about Rick, and wait, why am I forgetting Jason Isaacs, Mr. Ratliff? What's his name?
Oh, I just called him the Ratliff, so let me look it up while you're sitting there.
Ratliff Sr., I'm sorry, I'm blanking on it. Tim Ratliff. I keep wanting to say Theo Ratliff, but that's just my Sixers fandom talking. Okay. Better or worse, season 3, if Theo Ratliff is married to Parker Posey.
Honestly, I would take Theo Ratliff back on the Sixers today.
Oh my God. Defense would improve at any age.
No text from you about that, by the way.
About the Sixers?
Yeah.
I'm shutting myself down for the season too.
You're severing.
Thank you for asking. The Tim and Rick thing, where they just like instantly, even though they probably on some level have an enormous amount in common in terms of just trying to maintain something, even when long after the thrill is gone, they just instantly hate each other, and then just the only things they say to each other is "fuck off," basically.
Yeah.
That relationship compared to the women kind of being in a similar place, but saying we love you, we love you, is an interesting through line to watch.
The Trump conversation between Jacqueline, Kate, and Lori was one of the best scenes in this show.
Totally agree.
The performance, especially Bib, the way she nailed "I'm an independent" was so good.
That was an amazing line.
And I thought that the turn of her seeming like air of kind of like moral superiority, like kind of enlightenment that she's having when she's drinking that glass of wine, and kind of her strong posture, to juxtapose that with the way that the kind of shadows fall on her when she sees Jacqueline and Lori talking without her and obviously talking about her. I'm unclear exactly what the auditory prowess of everybody on this island is. There's a lot of hearing things from distances that I personally could not.
I don't think they spent as much time in rock clubs as we did in their 20s.
She should have seen Hot Snakes 3 times. She wouldn't have been able to fucking hear a thing.
And she would have been happier, right?
Yeah.
Because you would. What are you guys talking about? You talking about Hot Snakes concerts? I saw a couple.
But that was my favorite part by far. And just like, there is something about the cadence. Mike White definitely has been in those conversations, has had those conversations, and has got the cadence of the dance of like, who have you voted for? What have you done? Why? Like, the way it starts with the conversation about church, I just thought it was incredible.
By the way, Wikipedia seems convinced that it's lorazepam. Wikipedia is like,
yeah, well, the reason
in.
I brought it up was I think it was people, but it doesn't really matter, felt the need to, I guess there was like a concern troll about like, are people going to watch White Lotus and start doing lorazepam for fun?
Oh, that seems like a very genuine concern to have.
I honestly, at this point in this country, it couldn't hurt.
Take the edge off everybody.
Let's
just chill out.
Maybe we need to bring lewds back. Someone needs to give headsets some lewds.
Why are you burying the spiciest steaks in minute whatever this is? That's great. Do you think it's evidence of lorazepam in this country or a sign of the need for it that the New York Times ran a Maureen Dowd column called "He's Rootin' for Putin"? Do you think, where are you on the lorazepam dial? There you go. There you go. I think you just made it relevant.
Thanks.
That's nice.
The kids, the Ratliff kids. Mm-hmm. What's up with Piper's spiritual journey?
Do you think do you think she's doing it because of something that had happened to her?
It's maybe a consequence of 2 seasons of White Lotus where people do a lot of theorizing, but I also think it's a result of the way Mike White is telling the story, where there is a blank spot either in the emotional motivation or actual biographies of a lot of these characters. What did Tim Ratliff do? What is this? I mean, we obviously it's some sort of financial crime or whatever. Why or what, to what extent are the Ratliff kids touchy-feely with each other? Why is Parker Posey's character pretty much like in a sarcophagus of her own pharmaceutical design, but also like weird whenever she peeks her head above the parapet? Like when Kate comes up to her and she's just like,
that was so weird.
You. Like, what's up with that? Why is Rick so pissed? Why is Chelsea with him?
They're soulmates. Remember? They're soulmates.
Sure. But like, I don't even know how long they've been together.
What does she say? We're soulmates. And he says, our signs don't even.
Yeah, align. Right. Scorpio and what is she?
I don't remember.
I can't remember.
I
also don't know anything about astrology.
What's your sign?
Scorpio.
Oh.
Me and Goggins.
You and Goggins and Drake, I believe, right? The Holy Trinity. You guys have a lot in common.
Yeah, on the CR Bucks, it's like the pyramid, but it's like me, Goggins, and Drake.
Are you all holding, like, your arms are touching?
Yeah, we each have a third eye.
That's beautiful.
Sorry. Okay.
Are you worried that the listener is going to be like, Taurus and Scorpio should never podcast together?
Too late. We've been doing it for like 12 years now, right?
That's a full Chinese zodiac cycle since the last year of the snake.
You like the connective tissue across?
By the way, 13 years.
Okay. Oh. Our podcast has been bar mitzvahed.
Yeah, I know.
What did we get?
You were hopefully some CR bucks in our crypto wallet.
I used to fucking really be that dude at bar mitzvahs. You know that, right?
Would you just like show out?
Well, I only went to like 3, but I feel like it was bat mitzvahs. The girl whose bat mitzvah it was.
Brag. Only invited
I
to
went
the
to
ladies.
A couple. There was bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, as you may be aware.
Thank you.
I got asked to dance first by the birthday girl at 2 different ones. Yeah.
What?
And it was like back in my Parker Lewis Can't Lose rayon shirt.
Holy
days.
shit. Wait, yeah.
And I just fucking...
Slow dance you got asked to do?
Yeah.
Okay, now...
Once was to Stairway to Heaven, so, obviously, like, there's a shift.
That's a tough one. My main memory
and the other one was, if I have in my mind, it was Crazy for You by Madonna, but I don't know if that's true.
That's probably right. My first slow dance at the middle school dance was to Wham's "Careless Whisper." It's a nice one. Really felt the saxophone solo. I thought was a nice time
to like. I'm an Ashkenazi Jew. By the way.
I mean, I didn't need to lead with that, nor do I now. The main issue with the dancing at bar and bat mitzvahs is that they usually hit right in the sweet spot when all of the girls are 3 feet taller than the boys.
Yeah, I know.
So there's a lot of like...
I mean, they're still 3 feet taller than me.
So you were a short king before you were a king.
I was a pretty short kid, and now I'm a short man.
But you punched above your weight.
Do about it. Yeah, right. I'm not getting any kind of like experimental hip breaking surgery to like make myself 5'10".
You can't buy confidence.
I want to get back to the text here.
I don't. I'm loving this digression.
What is your reaction to the interconnected plot lines of the 3 seasons? So we've got Belinda from season 1 back in season 3 on this retreat to the White Lotus Phuket. Where are we?
Yeah, we're in Thailand, Phuket.
We've got Greg/Gary, who was Tanya's strange con man paramour.
They met in season 1, and he had her killed in season
2. And now he is in season 3. I saw some speculation online that season 3 was in fact taking place at a different, like in between 1 and 2 or whatever. I don't think that's happening.
It's definitely not the case.
Do you like it?
The overlaps?
Yeah, just curious. Like, is this something that you thought this is giving it this show kind of like a ballast that it didn't have?
For me, it is another sign of what makes Mike White very successful, which is that he has a lot of thoughts about identity and wellness and your worth as a person and how you express yourself in the world and how you can never escape yourself. But he is also an entertainer. Mm-hmm. And to me, I mean, sometimes you can't point to a eureka moment for successful TV shows, but it does seem like the origin story for the White Lotus and for Mike White's career. It's not even a resurgence, but this was leveling up to a completely different degree, can be traced to kind of one of those moments. And it was just like everything that he likes, but with very strict guidelines. In the case of like during COVID era, it's like these characters in this place and they can't leave. But also just the very simple conceit of, I'm going to show a body in the first few minutes. Season 1.
A crime, yeah.
We're going to show a crime. Like both seasons, I think.
All you need is a girl and a gun. Somebody said that about what it takes to write a good screenplay or make a movie.
And a bat mitzvah in the 90s. I think White Lotus would be a successful and entertaining and thought-provoking show without the central crimes of the first 2 seasons. I still think it would be good. But in terms of hooking people, in terms of getting people talking, Redditing, obsessing, those were essential decisions to have made and to put into the show. I say that because to me, that's what the overlapping stuff is. It is not, it's icing. It's not the cake. And it's fun. And maybe at some point there will be some grand connected narrative about what the show is actually saying. And it's all about Belinda. But we'll see.
Each hotel is a room that the macro data refinement team are refining.
Is that a sign that we're turning the page?
That was a suggestion that we could. I was going to ask you about Guy Talk and Mook.
I love Guy Talk.
Yeah, that guy's. I feel like that guy might have a great season.
You think things are going to go downhill for him?
I think he's too pure for this world.
He is pretty pure. He is.
So I don't think he's going to die necessarily.
He's very sweet.
But I am worried about where his character is going because that dude just has like. He's just like, I love standing right here.
This is fine.
And flirting with this woman.
He likes going to the fights.
I don't know why he wants to be a bodyguard, but I guess that's just like, that would be a step up financially. But like, who really wants to be
he just wants
a heavily armed bodyguard?
He wants to be the guy behind the guy, or in this case, in front of the guy.
But it seems like he has actually a relatively easy gig if nobody is trying to bum rush the hotel to rob it.
Yeah, but isn't it fundamentally that Mook just sees him as the nice guy who's just opening the gate? And maybe he thinks that if she saw him,
this is why you're the writer. I'm just a proletariat who's like, show me more sunshine.
Just the guy throwing on a rayon shirt, being like, "Let's go, ladies! Electric slide in 5."
Let's talk a little bit about Severance.
Okay.
I want to open with this thought. Severance's authorship, the author of Severance, has been something that kind of has, I think, changed in the course of the last 2 seasons and the development and production of this show, where Dan Erickson wrote this script.
Right.
It's his concept.
Created by.
I think Ben Stiller has been the public face of the behind the camera work that's been done.
Mm-hmm.
So at Knicks games, on podcasts, tweeting, just doing it all. He is like the voice of the show and the face of the show. And I would assume a lot of what's happening on the show is down to him. But that being said, I just want to give a shout out to the director of this episode and the director of photography for many of these episodes of Severance, Jessica Lee Gagne, who I thought shot the shit out of this thing. And it is one of the more virtuoso directorial performances you will see on the small screen or the big screen, honestly, in the last couple of years. And I have really enjoyed reading about all the practical ways they did certain shots in this episode, Chikai Bardo, using no CGI, doing like crazy production design and moving sets and moving the camera through things. The one that a lot of people have noted is, and spoilers for this episode, is immediately after the reveal of Gemma's miscarriage. There then is this sort of like layered nesting doll of who's watching who. It goes to a scene where Mark and Miss Hayes are talking, and then it jumps down to another level of the Lumen, maze, where a older but still Mark looking, although I doubt that that's really in any way Mark, but an older man is MDRing or like watching a computer while
coming from the inside, right? The suggestion that they're being watched through the screens.
Yeah, and that Dr. Maurer, who is also the dentist and the fertility doctor and the weird captor husband of Gemma in these different rooms, is standing there with the guy with the frolic tattoo. And I thought that was a great moment. She kept me like, I thought she did an incredible job directing this episode. So I wanted to start with that.
Yeah, I think if I could say, like, I also have a bunch of positive things to say. And one of them is the star of the show. I mean, you're saying who the author is and who the star is could be debated. But I think the star of the show is the camera. Even though Ben Stiller, he's directed some of the episodes, others have come in. There is a consistent visual language, and some of that has to go to Jessica Lee Gagne, who's shooting every episode, not just the ones that she directed as the director of photography. There is real inspiration and beauty in some of the most simple things, like the match cuts of rooms that resemble each other, especially as Mark is coming undone. That like a room on the severed floor will suddenly crackle and basically be a room above, but with different furniture, different color scheme, different lighting. Like that stuff is very, very, seems simple, very challenging, and very consistent, which is really nice. I think, I mean, I don't watch stuff for camera movement, but I recognize excellence when I see it. You know what I mean?
So where Brady Corbet is like, God damn it.
Not to say, I mean, that's the correct count. I mean, you're right. Like when I watched this episode, and I'll let you keep going because I have other positive things to say too. I was thinking a lot about our friend, and despite what many of our listeners may think he is our friend, Sam Esmail would say, like he is a director himself. He's a filmmaker himself, and aesthetically, this is unimpeachable. It's stunning to see this done on such a level. And often when especially for other filmmakers, when they see creatives and enormously talented creatives given the time, space, and priority to do what they do best and what they love to do, it can be, it's not just dazzling. I think that can be really affirming. And this episode is a masterclass in how to make things visually just excel, shine,
I was watching something last night. It actually doesn't matter what it was. It was a screener for something that's coming out.
Was it The Brutalist 2?
It was The Brutalist 2.
The deleted scenes? Yeah. Just extra content? Doylestown After Dark.
We got that.
Yeah.
We got that in Brutalist.
We got
Doylestown.
jazz,
little smack.
I know. Did you know that was just near our homes?
I was watching something and it's actually a good show with a very good reputation. But I watched it relatively soon after seeing Severance, and it struck me just even 85% of other television kind of looks like shit. It just, the light has nothing to do with the drama. Like the sets all feel like you're shooting this in Vancouver
And for what it's worth, that's time and money.
It's an economic reality. I completely understand that. I'm just saying that, like, I sometimes want to say Severance is doing something very special visually, and I think that honestly is enough. I will watch probably every episode of the show because of that.
I think I'm sure I've said some version of this before, but like where people have gotten into a lot of trouble, and not trouble, but although maybe trouble, and they end up in like TV jail. But during, especially, I think the now ended like super premium prestige bubble that we had for about a decade, was everyone thinking everything should be cinematic, but then having the budget of a basic cable show or whatever. And then so you have people coming in with big hopes and big dreams to do even a fraction of what Ben Stiller and his team do on Severance, and then they come crashing into the reality of 8 days to do it, and you end up kind of in the mushy middle, where you see the intent for like grandiose execution of visual ideas, and then you just can't actually execute it.
Yeah.
So seeing it done, I think, is, judgment of the show aside, is a celebration for that kind of work, the possibility and the potential of that kind of work on the small screen.
I also just thought I'd throw this out here. I don't know when, otherwise I would mention it. It is occurring to me that Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is one of the most influential films of the 21st century.
Totally.
I don't know that I would have thought that, but like I feel, I would not necessarily have thought that 10 years ago, but I feel like visually, and also the ideas that film played with, this idea that you could basically play within your own mind and go around and interact with your own memories in this way. And the way it's visualized, I think, is a huge influence on this show, a huge influence on this episode specifically. And the ideas that the brain is somehow like this landscape that we can traverse is not it's not the only time it's ever happened, or the first time it's ever happened is Eternal Sunshine, but I feel like the way Gondry brought that to life, and the things that people were trying to heal from inside of their own minds are very similar and are very resonant in this show. And I feel like I just don't have anything at my fingertips. I have to Eternal Sunshine my own references here, but it does feel like it's worth noting that is a huge, huge influence on a lot of stuff that's come since there.
I totally agree with you. I think it is also interesting to note, though, that I think Gondry would be the left hemisphere version of the brain, though.
And Charlie Kaufman would be the right?
No, Stiller is the right. Right, left is the creative one, the artistic one. Like it's there's something that is just fundamentally messy about Michel Gondry's filmmaking. I mean, it's a lot of it is handmade. Some you see beautiful ideas, and then you see some like just misses and mistakes. And Eternal Sunshine is the best example of it all coming together. Although if you talk to anyone who worked on the making of that film, everyone was like, we are a day away from a catastrophe.
Right.
Like this, they did not think they had a masterpiece. And sometimes that happens, and that's a beautiful thing. But not until like way into the edit did they think, oh, it works.
This works.
Stiller and Severance, and this is an aesthetic choice, this isn't a value judgment, is much more clinical. It's much more anal. It is precise. Everything is straight lines.
I set up this binary, so I don't expect, I'm not correcting you, but I will say Eternal Sunshine is about kind of going into your memories to try and keep or lose like this heartbreak that you have, but is in definite conversation with that. This is about cutting that fucking stuff out. The reason why these people presumably thought they chose to do Severance, it may become evident that Severance chose them as we keep going, and that's certainly what this episode suggested, was to cut out the durational experience of loss, right? Or grief, or whatever it is that the feeling that they want to get away from is. So I think that is like the main difference. They're trying to get away from their memories.
I think it's totally right. And I think I think this conversation is really interesting in terms of different ways that you can express aspects of the human condition, particularly through can we ever separate parts of ourselves? Can we ever become different people? But I do think, again, this is not a judgment thing because we do not, and the judgment things are coming. But I do feel, I bristle against comparisons of Severance to things like Eternal Sunshine or other, interesting boundary-pushing stories about the self, like Lost Highway or something.
Sure.
Because Eternal Sunshine and Lost Highway come from a place of real messiness, risk, and danger. Like, you don't really understand intellectually what's happening, but at times you emotionally
intellectually understand what's happening on Severance.
Feel it. But I feel like Severance is set up for there to be an intellectual answer.
Okay.
And that we'll see how that resolves. Maybe that tension is the text. Like, maybe that's ultimately what it's going to be about, that you cannot do that. And thus there are these verdant, goat-covered hills of humanity that just exists spilling outside of you can't contain it in this white box at the Lumen headquarters. I'd be really interested in that. But they are very, very different ways aesthetically to tackle an intangible idea.
There's a moment in this episode where Gemma is going through her sort of various, maybe actually towards the beginning of when we're getting introduced to her doing this, but like the dentist's office, the whatever is happening in these rooms. She's getting treated by Sandra Bernhard's Cecily character, the nurse, and Robbie Benson's doctor character, Dr. Maurer.
By the way, kudos to Stiller's Rolodex.
Great casting.
Phenomenal casting. Like, people who are known and out there with careers and successes, but I wouldn't say Bernhard or Benson are like on the bench, but I don't know if they're at the top of anyone's like guest star list.
Smart places to put those people.
Yeah, it's cool.
Sandra Bernhard could easily have been Devon, but it's something very creepy about her as a Nurse Ratched, or maybe a slightly more sympathetic nurse. Not that there's only one nurse, like.
Do you want to talk about your feelings about nurses? I feel like there's something here.
Nurse Dana, among my favorite people in the world right now.
God bless her.
There's a moment where Gemma says to Dr. Maurer, "Can you please just talk like a normal person?"
Yeah.
That was one of the highlights of the season for me.
Me too.
Because I can only be me, and I do ask these questions, and I do want to know what level of artifice we're living in, what normal people in this world are like, because the only people we really know are characters who are obviously like totally obsessed with what's happening with Mark, or what's happening.
Very invested in
it. There's not like another, even when we get to see the door company or, whatever, like you're like, this is highly stylized and very clearly like about mirroring Dylan, and there's stuff going on in that. Gemma and Mark marking their papers while donating blood, probably also the point where Lumen started analyzing who they were in the first place.
Yes.
Was this like breath of fresh air for me, I think it's supposed to be. It's all lit warmly. It's all lit like normal life.
I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
I feel like that was, in many ways, the first crucial piece of information that we've been given this season. And maybe it's subtle, but because the show is such a tightly siloed box of aesthetic choices, it was, to me at least, deeply unclear whether the color palette of the Audi world was a stylistic choice to mirror the inner emotional lives of people like Mark and to be a contrast with the bright
or a physical reality kind of thing.
Exactly. So the fact that the world, at least the way the world was lit or the way the seasons work, was suggested to be quote unquote normal by this episode was enormous. That prior to all of this going south for him, he seemed to exist at least in a world that looks more or less like our world.
Yeah.
It's crazy that that's where we are with these things, but these are the little things that I don't know if I've always articulated it clearly, but like I don't understand the playing field of the game we're playing, the parameters of the stadium or the conditions on the field, or if this is a unique. I need that stuff to ground myself.
I think
in
that
my viewing.
The show is so expansive and it's so capable of going down levels in Lumen. Who's refining the refiners? Who is minding the goats? Like you can keep dropping down levels, and I find myself wanting, maybe wrongly, for the show to go up levels and be like, who is the governor of the state where Lumen is, and does that person care that this is happening? Like, does anybody give a shit?
Does that person have to answer to his constituents in town halls? Is that what you're wondering?
That's right. That's right. God, there's a lot to unpack here. I guess I would say that I loved a lot about this episode and deeply, deeply disliked the Devon Ragabi scene at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Towards the end, where Mark has been discovered, obviously. And I guess any scene where Devin and Ragabi are kind of like talking about Harmony, what to do next. Take my word for it, he'll be fine. But I have done brain surgery on him, but I'm also very quick to leave him. Her kind of vagueness as a character and to the extent to which she is really there only to push the ball forward about Mark's reintegration and Mark becoming fucking Neo in the Matrix or whatever they're going to do with him.
Yeah,
I'm like, neither of you are making any sense in this scene, and that you can only have one person who's not making any sense.
Yeah, the what's her name, Ragabi? Like that's not a character. She's a plot point, and I find that very frustrating. And particularly to your point, like that in that scene, Devin is like, I get out of here. You can't touch him. You're hurting him. I'm gonna call Cobell, and then the doctor's like, fuck this. I'm out of here. And then she goes, you can't leave him. You just. Like the doctor explained what her terms were. Don't call her. So now they're arguing about it.
Right.
Even though she could just behave differently to get the outcome she wanted. That was...
It was just a very disorienting scene that I think was essentially there to get Ragabi out and get Cobell back in.
Yeah.
And
sometimes you can feel that the marionette strings.
I haven't seen ahead. I mean, I assume Patricia Arquette is coming back to the show at some point and having a sort of...
She's an EP this season.
Yeah, so it's weird that she has been in like 8 minutes of it so far.
I'm fine with that, personally. I had a question. So, I mean, people who have been listening know this, like, and I will just be upfront about it. Like, this show is an emotionally closed box to me. It doesn't work for me. I don't get it. Gotcha. I don't feel for these characters, and I'm not really moved by it. I wish I was. So that's why I'm trying to focus on more of the aesthetic things that I think really are remarkable. That said, this episode clearly worked for a lot of people who consider it to be, I think, the best of the season, if not the series so far. And I was wondering your feelings about the show's, the goal of the episode, because it was, again, it was forced to do something that is quite challenging. And I say that with, again, the caveat that the majority of viewers think that it did it successfully. The challenging thing is, can you retroactively inject a storyline, characters, a couple, a relationship with enough emotional juice to earn what you're going to do with them?
Right.
This was the first episode where we ever saw a glimpse of Mark and Gemma Scout's, if she changed her last name, I don't know, I'm not judging, of their life together. It's a remarkably heavy lift on a number of levels. First, it's a really hard lift on an acting level because Dyken Lockman and Adam Scott have only ever played Mrs. Casey and Mark S. together, I believe, on screen.
I believe you're right.
So to suddenly have to flirt and have this warm relationship that in just a few pages of script has to convey, great depth of feeling and history, that's really hard. And I think for the most part, they succeeded. I think Adam Scott was really outstanding in this because he got to play some notes that he's been known for in his career that he doesn't always get to do on the show. And I know that he's spoken about what a great opportunity the show is for him to show the other parts of himself and the
right, because he's been basically
side.
Doing comedy for a long time, but he was more or less a trained dramatic actor until like he shows up in Step Brothers and everybody's like, well, you're one of the 5 funniest people to put in a movie.
But he's also super just effortlessly charming and has good chemistry with people, and that was nice to see on the show, especially with the sunlight. But it's not just challenging from actors, it's challenging from a writing perspective and then a directorial perspective because it just has to do so much heavy lifting. And I wondered, A, if you thought that it was effective in terms of your viewing experience, but B, and I kind of if I wasn't super jet lagged, I would have done more research on it. Or I should have done research on it while I was awake this morning instead of thinking about eating corn chips before the sun came up. But I'm glad about that decision, by the way. I wondered how many examples of this we have of being done well, of backfilling something. I was thinking Lost attempted versions of this multiple times per season, of like to understand what a character
But if
left.
I remember correctly, like the flashbacks in Lost were essentially thematic foundations for what the character was going to be doing in the episode's
in the present.
Current.
Yeah, it was just like a moment from their past that
illustrates why
with their current predicament,
right?
Or why they behave a certain way.
Why Saeed's going to do this? Yeah.
I guess I wondered if you had if you had anything on the top of your head of this being done particularly well, or if you would say this did it well.
Do you know what's making that stuff actually work for me a little bit? is this show is maybe a little bit more emotionally complicated than I thought it was, because not that I thought it was, but that I was giving it credit for, because the entire time we're watching this very heartbreaking story of a relationship, I was also thinking about the fact that this dude is in love with Helly.
Yes, right.
So
part of him is.
Well, but the bifurcated part of him is about to
unify.
Yeah. So like when this dude wakes up on the couch with tears in his eyes saying, sir, where is my girlfriend?
President?
Or wife? Who's president? That's right. Sorry, what happened with NATO?
He's an independent.
I think that is what I'm most interested in seeing, is that like one soul can love two people, or maybe he doesn't even love Helly. I don't know. I mean,
no, but maybe
that's just like literally his work wife,
or maybe I'm just a simp. But like, I'm into that story.
Yeah, I'm into Helena.
Yeah,
being like, more dim sum, please.
She didn't order that much. She didn't
order anything.
He ordered everything.
Yeah,
there was no food left.
Yeah,
is the issue there. It's just, it's a forest and trees thing. And these trees, and in this case, I mean like the different sort of banal torture rooms. I say banal because it's like the dentist, turbulence, like these are real everyday things. These are just sort of amplified, horrific versions of them, are so wild, unexpected, and so beautifully designed.
But also the kinds of things that you would want to forget or be severed for.
That's a great point. But also, like, though I find that entertaining, I didn't feel anything for the Gemma character. Like, other than that sucks. It's tough. It is potentially. Do we feel like there's something? I mean, you're on the boards. Is the sense that like Gemma's doing this to save Mark, to have a baby, because that was the goal?
I definitely think that the amount, one of the things I really liked about this episode is the amount of like biological surveillance these two people were under, from giving blood to the fertility clinic, where there is a quick moment where Dr. Maurer is in the clinic walking by. They are being watched. They are being surveilled down to their bloodstreams for a long time.
Now, I should say that you're saying this as someone who wants that in terms of like just making your flights easier. Because I was just like,
anything they want.
That is one of my favorite things about you.
Literally, Bradley X Delta may have like my DNA,
as long as it reduces your wait time in certain lines at LAX.
Just let me get my Uncrustables faster. It's
beautiful.
I just think that what I don't understand is, did Gemma volunteer for this, or was she taken for this?
Right.
And if she was taken, I don't know what that means. I mean, obviously there's a criminal aspect to what Lumen is doing, but like, did she go down there because like they've talked about the world you will sire? Were they going to make her fertile? I just don't know where that's at. I feel like I've like picked up though. I've like, this was an episode where I was like, there's a little bit more coming together for me. There are still parts that bother me a lot, but I think I am looking at much more enjoyably as a puzzle to solve, rather than, I think where you're coming from is like, I'm not emotionally connecting with this. And I also, while I respect the virtuosity of the filmmaking, that's not enough for me to be like on board with what's happening.
Yeah, but it is enough for me to be impressed. Like I not to sound completely bloodless about it. Like I think it's dazzling, and it is a triumph in the ways that aren't always my priority in viewing experiences. And the other thing that I really do appreciate about the show, though, for as much as my criticisms over the last few weeks seem to be pointed at it being, just nothing but a mystery box show, it churns forward. It may not churn forward at the schedule that I want, or in the types of revelations that I'm more interested in.
We're not arriving at any recognizable ports of call where you're like, okay, then this. Yes.
That said, it did a flashback episode. It did do the backfilling that I was saying is challenging, and it went for it, and it tried to do it in a way that was narratively and aesthetically consistent with what has come before, and that's not nothing. It is not running from stuff. I continue to say, like, I feel like this is the one point that people who listen to the podcast and disagree with me will agree with me on. I think we are united in saying that the finale is going to be super wild
and important.
The season finale,
yeah, and important.
Like they are not scared, and I
gotta say, one of the other things that fucked me up this episode in a bad way was I do not remember anything about Devin at the birthing retreat from an episode in the middle of the first season 3 years ago. And that was apparently an important thing about why she knew how to get in touch with.
She was, Harmony was cosplaying as her night nurse.
I didn't remember.
And seems to be super interested in other people's...
Obviously, I don't remember the Constant and what happens in that.
Babies. No, but you've been doing a great job bluffing here. I'll say that I did find the whole episode more understandable and enjoyable when I realized that it was just a metaphor for jet lag. And that Mark's experience of being like, I'm in my kitchen, I'm on the kitchen floor. I was like, finally, I'm seeing.
Your version of that is just like you have like a mouthful of Tostitos.
There's just crumbs everywhere.
Here's what we're going to do.
Okay.
We're going to complete the podcast there because we had such a lovely conversation.
You have such an innate sense of timing. You were being real cagey about 1,000 Blows and you knew we just didn't have the runway for it today.
It's not even that. It's just I want to gauge your level of engagement. And also, we have the Pit, we have 1,000 Blows, and maybe Daredevil.
We have Daredevil
Thursday. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we can do all of it. I'm engaged by 1,000 Blows. I'd love to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk specifically about how it mirrors my own experience as a newcomer to London. How dangerous it is to dodge horses and buggies.
As a guy who likes taming lions, yeah.
I mean, metaphorically, yeah.
Greenwald, it's wonderful to have you back, man.
I'm back. I'm back.
And thanks to Kaya and everybody behind the scenes for making the show today. And we will be with you again on Thursday.